All right, folks, and welcome back to Procreate. So before we get started, I'm going to make one small editorial issue. I'm going to go ahead and in my master group, I'm going to grab my move tool, my transform tool, and I'm going to move my shadow out a little bit because if the light is coming from the downward left direction where my highlight is in the ball, this shadow wouldn't be directly under it. So I made a subtle adjustment. All right, cool. Master group, all locked down. Now, we're going to add one layer, and now I'm just going to use a really simple hard brush. You can use whatever you want. It's not important. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to sketch the path of travel I want this ball to have. Now, when something hits the ground, right, it loses momentum. So a lot of times this arc of travel, now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move that over. This arc of travel at first is bigger than the second bounce, right? Because it loses energy. So in reality, this would be a good logical path of motion for this ball. Now, that's exactly what I'm creating here is this motion path. Now, the GIF works in frames per second. So 10 frames per second means there will be 10 layers or 10 stills of animation that are shown. 30 frames per second means there will be 30 layers that are done. So here's the difference. 10 frames per second gets a little bit blocky. It makes the animation look a little bit stop motion-y. 30 frames per second means it's a little more buttery smooth, right? But the problem is I don't want to do 30 frames of a bouncing ball, and I'm sure you don't want to do 30 frames of a bouncing ball. So I'm going to shoot for about 15 frames in this 1 second clip. So to do this, I want to put down this ball, so let's go ahead and line the ball up, with the motion path. And I'm going to use that little highlight I created here as my indicator. So I'm going to put that right on the path. And now with my layer selected of motion path, that's going to be my first frame, second frame, third frame, fourth frame, fifth frame, sixth frame, seventh frame, eighth frame, ninth frame, 10th frame, 11th frame, 12th frame, 13, 14, 15. You see where we're going with this. All right, I got to 18 frames. I apologize. So that's kind of how you do this. So there's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So that's kind of how you make this happen. And now all we have to do is we're going to duplicate this master layer every time. So I'm going to show you this the first time in this video, and then I'm going to cut. And then in the next video, we're going to solidify this. So it's the same process if you get it down. So first thing I do, I come to my master group, and I left swipe, and I duplicate it. Now, what I'm going to do with this master group, because I want the first still frame, I grab the master group I just created, I click on the square, and I flatten it. And then I go ahead and I rename it frame 1. Cool. All right, frame 1 is done, and I drag it to the base. Now, I'm going to take the master frame. This is what is my modifiable. And I'm going to grab the ball inside of it. I'm going to grab the transform tool. And I'm just going to come down here and move it along the motion path. So I just moved the ball. Now what's my other moving piece? The shadow, right? So shadow transform. And the shadow is going to move a little bit as well. All right, so you see I made a modification to master group. What should I probably do? Right click, duplicate, and with that duplicate, flatten. And let's rename it. Frame 2. Okay, now frame 2 is going to go down below here. And now I modify my master group again for frame 3. One more time and I'll stop this video and then we'll move into the next one. I grab the 2 moving pieces. All right, I grab the ball. Where am I going to move the ball? Down along the motion path to frame 3. Okay, and then I have to move the shadow. And we move the shadow. Now, as you do this, you'll move the shadow less and less, because as the ball approaches the ground, the shadow and the ball are going to come together and collide. All right, so I made the adjustment to the master group. What do you think I'm going to do now? Left swipe, duplicate, and then with this change, I'm going to come up here, I'm going to flatten, and then I'm going to rename, and I'm going to call this frame 3. All right, drag it to the bottom. All right, let's go ahead and cut it here. In the next lesson, I'm going to show you the process. You're going to see it one more time. We're going to speed ramp this thing, and then I'm going to show you how to export it once you've got all X number of frames in the shot. All right, we'll see you in the next one.